All right. Welcome back, everybody. I am Nancy Siegel of Solutions for the Workplace, and I have with me, as always, my partner in crime, Ellen Steverson of Starting Block Career Services. And this is our podcast on LinkedIn. And really, what we want to talk about is why should you care? And once we talk to you about that, what are the things you really need to do to maximize the effectiveness of your LinkedIn? So, Ellen, our expert in the private sector, does the private sector care about LinkedIn?
Yes, they do. I would say yes and no. It's like everything in the private sector, it depends. So the most important thing about LinkedIn that I would like to unsolve this mystery is I get people who say, I have to be on LinkedIn because my brother said I need to be on LinkedIn. You are creating a career strategy to manage your career. And if you are a police officer, you might not need to be on LinkedIn. Does that need to be out there? I don't know. You have to think about the different strategies. But yes, LinkedIn is very important for most people in today's world, that they're going to get your resume and immediately go to LinkedIn and look you up. So what you need to also think about is, once I look you up, what do I see? Is it good or bad? And we're going to talk about that. What about the federal agency?
So the federal government is not as enamored of LinkedIn as the private sector. As you well know, the private sector check people out on LinkedIn before they call them for an interview, but they also source applicants through LinkedIn.
Yes, they
Recruiters are
do.
using it.
Mhm.
So I think candidates, frankly, are nuts if they're not on LinkedIn unless they're working undercover or in the intelligence community. The feds are, like I said, less enamored on a recruitment basis, etc. That being said, I think anyone who is managing their career should be on LinkedIn, federal or not. And the federal side, for a couple of reasons. Number one, agencies are, in fact, posting jobs on LinkedIn. Federal agencies are. I should say it's not the entire job posting. You should go back to usajobs.gov to get the entire thing. But that's one reason. Reason number two is because some hiring managers will look you up on LinkedIn before they call you in for an interview, just like in the private sector. But the other two reasons I would encourage federal employees to use LinkedIn, one is because when you get called for an interview, you should be asking who's doing the interviewing and look people up on LinkedIn, not so you can stalk them, but so you can have a little simpatico if there's an opportunity to have a little bit of casual conversation as you're walking to the interview room, or if they ask you about something that's not strictly job related, you can make a connection. And, another reason that you should be on LinkedIn as a federal employee is that our customers in the federal government are our stakeholders. That means it's citizens. That means it is state and local government personnel, NGO personnel, plus other federal employees. And we should be thinking about networking as part of managing our career, which we're not going to be talking about now, but just because the federal government isn't as fixated as the private sector is on LinkedIn, you still need to be there, in my view. But if you're going to be there, do I have to fill out the whole thing? What do you think, Ellen?
Yes, I do agree with you totally, Nancy, that in the private sector, people do need to be on LinkedIn for all the reasons you said. They're exactly the same reason for the private sector. And I tell my people that are a little bit older, when you're on LinkedIn, you're telling the employers, hey, I'm technology savvy. I can get on here. I know what I'm doing. But if you get on there and then your profile looks terrible, it's just lack of effort. Do you care? And that's a terrible thing to put out there to the world. If you're going to do it right. Make sure you got a banner, a picture, your header filled out, your summary filled out, your experience filled out. And then that brings us back to keywords. Just like we discussed last week on the last podcast about keywords on resumes, LinkedIn is a computer system and it is going to look for keywords in your header, your summary, and in your experience section as well as your skills. Those are the 4 top areas heavily ranked for keywords.
The LinkedIn algorithms are unbelievable. So to me, the header is critical. Now, as you and I both know, LinkedIn defaults to your current job title and employer.
Mm-hmm.
However, what some of our listeners may not realize is that that can be edited to be algorithm rich and include those keywords. There's 120 characters of space that you can actually use for keywords. So instead of just saying director of the ABC program at wherever, you can actually talk about things like your leadership, or you can talk about project management professional, IT expert, cybersecurity professional, things that are more meaningful, A, to the reader, and also not only are they more understandable to the reader who may not live in your universe, if you use words that people understand, you're more likely to be caught up in the algorithms by recruiters, people looking for cybersecurity folks, networking, all of that. So I'm a big fan.
Right. So the thing you have to remember is recruiters don't see the same thing we see. Recruiters have a different platform. For lack of better words, we'll just say the backside of LinkedIn. So you have to have these keywords so they can find you. And just like everybody else, if you opened up your computer and had 500 people to look at, it's going to rank them. They're really not going to scroll all the way down to number 500. They're going to pick the top of the top, which is why you want to get a lot of keywords sprinkled all the way through your profile so that you rank up higher for the recruiters to see you. In addition, like Nancy said, every section has characters. Now, the problem with LinkedIn is it's owned by Microsoft, a software company. They constantly change things. So you have to keep up with it. It's like a living document. You have to get in there and do things. So Nancy is absolutely right. And actually, there is on your phone, if you try and do your header on your phone, Microsoft has started playing with letting people have 220 characters in the header. But they're test piling it by people doing it on their phone. So if you start to see people with longer headers, that's why. So that's just a little trick you might want to try. Can you download the app, go to the header section and edit it? And we all just have to be technology savvy when it comes to LinkedIn.
So I think the header, and just for people who aren't familiar with what the header is, it's the words under your name.
Correct, Nancy. Thank you for pointing that out because you're right. We're using a term most people might not know. But a header section is in everything. So if you pull it up online, it's the first thing people see. If you pull it up on your phone, it's the first thing people see. It is always attached to your profile and it is critical. The recruiter doesn't care that you're a teacher at such and such a high school. By default, Nancy said, you want it to say teacher, department head, and really use the keywords for the job so the recruiters can find you. It is okay if you want to add a little tagline or something a little bit memorable to maybe get them to read your summary. I know this is a big advice in the industry, but honestly, at the end of the day, if you want people to find you, put all the keywords like Nancy said.
So we've talked about the header. Another part that I encourage people to fill out, and it's not a requirement, so people ignore it, is the About Me section. Is it 2,000 characters, or did they just increase?
They just increased it to 2,600. And the reason they're doing that is so they want people to have more keywords.
So 2,600 characters of free space to sell yourself. And unlike your resume, which should be written in first person implied, LinkedIn is a good place, and in the About Me, to get a little bit, not crazy, a little bit personal. You can use personal pronouns in this. I am. You might even want to say, I believe. It still should be professional, but it can be at a level that demonstrates at least a little bit of your personality, as long as you can control yourself. But algorithm rich, 2,600 characters, that's more than half a page.
I think you're absolutely right, Nancy. It is very important to understand this is a professional site. This is not Facebook. So you're not using the same writing skills. I see people writing things in the summary like they're on Facebook because they put BC. People are looking to see your qualification. If you're in marketing, when you write your summary, maybe you should add some icons and things into the summary to show that you know how to jazz it up a little bit. But absolutely critical to have those keywords, Nancy.
Right. And not go crazy on personality, because at the end of the day, people want to connect with you, not because of your sterling personality, but because of the skills and experience you bring to the table. It's part of your branding.
Right, and that's the good thing to talk about, is that you are trying to brand yourself consistently throughout every document, your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, even I would say Facebook, Twitter. So you get all inconsistent, that's not good for your brand, okay? You want to stay consistent. But Nancy brings up a good point. It is okay to say, I started in photography at a young age, and I went to school to this, and now I use my photography skills as a graphic designer. So it is okay to add a little personality, or why do you like your job so much? Like a lot of times when I write salespeople's LinkedIn, I say, well, what do you like about sales? Or even a security person, what do you like about security? And it's always so fun to hear somebody say, well, I love this and I love that. Okay, well then let's write something a little bit about that without putting the word love, passion. You know, be careful of these overused words. Make yourself look professional and keep your summary personal but professional.
And what do you think about putting a picture on LinkedIn? I get a lot of pushback from people who don't want to put their picture on LinkedIn.
Well, I always say to my clients, I'm not going to force you to do something you're uncomfortable with. So if you're really uncomfortable with it, then don't do it. But here's the reality. LinkedIn has the data. You can Google it, and it's an unbelievable number. Like 60% of people who have pictures, they'll click on because they have a picture. Whereas if you have no picture, the recruiters don't click on you. In some ways, not having a picture, and I mean a professional picture, yeah, no cartoons, no your dad's walking behind you with a beer. Be mindful of those pictures, because that does tell a lot about yourself. And I was hesitant to put my picture up on LinkedIn, to be quite frank, because I have some scars on my face from surgery. But then one day my husband said, the picture's 1 inch. Who's going to see it? And I thought, you know what? He's right. It's 1 inch. So people, let's get over ourselves. Put your picture up. Be professional. And have a nice smile. People want to work with happy people.
Yeah, and let me add something here too. The Army is the largest user of LinkedIn in the world.
Wow, that's great information.
Yes, but when I look at LinkedIn profiles for some of my military clients, sometimes I see them in uniform with their shoulders back and their chest all puffed out and looking very severe. And to your point about people wanting to work with people who look nice, if you are transitioning from the military, you need a civilian picture. I understand you're proud of your career. I understand why formal military pictures look more severe because you never want to find yourself in trouble and they show you a picture of you smiling, not the right message in the media. But when you're going for a civilian career, you really want to show that you are a civilian, ready and able to make that transition and be approachable.
Right. And I totally agree with you. As you know, I work with a lot of military as well. And I love to see my higher level military men in their uniform. They got a whole chest of these incredible medals. And I hate to be the person like, okay, now take that picture down. A lot of times I think people, not that they can't afford it, they can afford it, but they just don't want to be bothered to go and buy a professional picture. Well, here's the thing, people. We now all have phones that take really good pictures. And actually uploading a picture from your phone to LinkedIn is very easy. Just download the app, take a picture, make sure nothing's behind you, a brick background, or if take down a picture off a wall and just use a blank wall, take a picture, upload it, and boom, you're done. That's all it takes.
So what other clever things can you do with LinkedIn that sometimes people don't think about?
So the new feature that I'm kind of liking a lot is there's two that I think is kind of fun. We'll see if they stay around because LinkedIn changes with everything. They now have on your phone, and I'd have to go look, but I didn't see it on the computer side. You have to go on your phone, but you can record your name. Now, why would that be important? Well, if you have a name that's very difficult, which we talked about in another episode about how on your resume you would put a nickname maybe. But now you really have the opportunity to say your name. It is just a quick little thing. And then when they pull up your profile, there's actually a little microphone next to your name. And that lets people know that if they click on it, they'll hear Ellen Steverson. I think that's brilliant.
And if you're interviewing someone, no one wants to have their name mispronounced.
Right.
And even if you're going to meet someone professionally, you want to pronounce their name correctly. What a great, cool tool.
Okay, well, the other tool has to do with recording as well. So now, you know how we can text people, send a little message on LinkedIn, you type it in. Well, now you can actually leave a message and say, Nancy, it was great meeting you this morning at that networking event. I just wanted to connect with you on LinkedIn and say how much I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. Bye-bye. Just a quick 30-second. They then get a message, they hit it, and boom, that message comes up. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and very personable. Since we are all still, or many of us are still somewhat isolated or cautious, that personal touch goes such a long way.
I agree with you. And it will be interesting to see if they both stay, if they become well loved. Would I leave a voicemail message to a hiring manager I've never met that might say, hi, Mr. Smith, I can't wait to meet you on Tuesday? I probably wouldn't recommend that. Let's be wise about how we're using these new technology. But great little tools.
A good part of LinkedIn is free. Do you think it's worth paying for?
So I get that question asked all the time, and this is how I answer it. If you pay for a gym and you go to the gym every day or every other day or a couple of times a week, you work out, you love it, your tone, you use it, great. The gym is worth it. If I buy a gym membership and never go to it 6 months later, did I think it was worth it? No. Same with LinkedIn. If you get on LinkedIn and you're going to work it, the premium can be worth it because you have unlimited amount of connections. You can send instant messages, whereas if it's a free account, it'll cut you off. So there is definite value. What I tell people is if you are in a job search, it's worth the premium. Buy it for a few months. Don't buy it for the whole year up front. Just buy it for a few months. When you land a job, stick with it. If you find yourself phasing out of using it as much as you were, then cancel your subscription. You don't have to pay for a whole year. It's one of those things, if you use it, it's worth it. If you're never going to use it, it's not worth it. But even if you're never going to use it, please make sure your profile looks good.
Right. And just while we're talking about paying for it, I want to mention that transitioning military members get 1 year of premium for free. If they're a transitioning military member, this is a freebie. You should take advantage.
Take advantage and then really get out there and network. That's the mistake I see people making. They'll hire me and then they'll be like, oh, I've been on LinkedIn a couple of years, and I pull up their account and they got 3 connections. People, let's connect. If you ever went to college, connect with all your alumni. Get out there, start using it. Every day, try and connect. I will give you a nice little tip that most people don't think about. Have a little thing in a Word document that is personalized that you can just copy and paste into the invite message, because you do want to put something personable. So if you're reaching out to alumni, make something very specific to your alumni. If you're reaching out to old employees, make something very tailored to them. But then you can copy and paste it, and this way you can send out a whole bunch every day quickly.
So if 3 connections is not enough, is 100?
Typically, the rule of thumb is to try and get over 500. And
Right.
I know that sounds like a lot, and yes, it will take some time. I also get asked a lot like, oh, well, somebody connected with me. I don't know them. Should I connect? You do need to be cautious on LinkedIn, but in reality, you're networking. So go and look at their profile. If they look professional, if you have stuff in common, you can see why they reached out to you, whatever, then accept it. And what I like to do is I reach back out. I accept, and once I'm accepted, I accept. I then send a message right back saying, thank you for connecting. You know,
Right.
sometimes I might ask, was there something you needed help with? Or so again, don't be afraid to start a conversation immediately after they ask for the connection, because you're fresh on their mind. So now you can start a dialogue.
And it's not so hard to find people to connect with, because LinkedIn's algorithms are unbelievable. It was just amazing, the connections that LinkedIn suggests for you, and they're only getting more sophisticated.
And that would be another reason to pay for the premium, is so that you have these advantages. When I started paying for the premium, it also tells you who's looked at you. It gives you charts. It gives you some good information. It would be interesting if I was looking for a job and I see the manager at Boeing that I'm going to interview with next week looked at my profile. All right, I know he's serious, right? There's lots of reasons. And another thing about LinkedIn a lot of people talk about is recommendations and endorsements. How are you going to get endorsements and recommendations if you're not building up your connections? So that's important. You should take that part of it seriously too. You can get some recommendations. Now with me, I have older recommendations on there. I have a boutique business and I want my clients to feel that my services are confidential. But I still have things on there, and I have a ton of things on my website. Leverage LinkedIn the way you want, but go ahead and get recommendations and endorsements.
And don't forget skills.
Right, and skills. Now, those skills are very important. LinkedIn will suggest a whole bunch. Don't pick the word project and then a separate one, pick management. Put project management together, because then you can pick out better words.
Keywords. So just a couple of other things I think we should touch on. First thing I'd like to touch on is customizing your LinkedIn URL. So LinkedIn randomly assigns you a URL, and that URL has got, I don't know, 6 or 8 random numbers following your name. I think it is critical that everybody know that is customizable. I customize my LinkedIn URL early enough that it's just my name. But at this point, there's a lot of people with names just like yours. So you might want to say, you can customize it. I might, if I needed to, Nancy Siegel, Federal Resume Writer.
Like email everybody. You put in your name, Ellen Steverson. Once you hit enter, it will say take it, because I have it. Okay, so then you could try Steverson Ellen. You could put a middle initial in it. Or like a lot of people like to do their name, Joe Smith PM for project manager. I don't recommend though that you add any numbers unless it's just 1 or 2. We don't want to have people thinking that's the year you were born or anything like that. And
Right.
and this is something you're going to put on or could put on business cards, your email signature at the bottom. So you don't really want it that long. And please, it's like email. Please don't put anything silly, superstar rock girl. No.
And another place you might want to put your LinkedIn URL, once you've customized it, is on your resume. And so that brings me to my last point, and that is, once I have a new resume that's followed all the tips and unsolved mysteries that we've discussed, can I just copy and paste my resume directly into LinkedIn?
That is not recommended. There's so many different reasons why, but the main reason is you don't want to look lazy. You don't want to look like, I just copied and pasted. There's 2 philosophies. Some people like to put what they have on their resume plus more, which is the advantage of LinkedIn. You could add more. And other people like to hold back some things off of. If you work for a privately held company, you need to be very careful about what you're putting on LinkedIn. The owner of the company may not appreciate if you're putting on there sold $2 million worth of XYZ. That's competition information and business information. You need to really be aware of private information. So that's a yes or no answer, Nancy, as far as what to add, but definitely don't just copy and paste.
I agree with that. You can get a little more personal on your experience section, but if nothing else, make sure your job titles, employers, and dates match your resume. You don't want different jobs, different dates, different job titles on LinkedIn than appear on your resume.
Right. Just think about how bad that looks when you're supposed to have a job that you're detail oriented, and on your own, between a resume and a LinkedIn, you don't even have the details correct on the 2 of them. Make sure they align perfectly.
Even if the content is different, the dates and the basic information should remain the same.
Absolutely. And on your education section, I would recommend to take off the dates. And you do not put high school on there. You do not have to tell what year you graduated, because ageism is alive and well, and you want to protect that information. It's part of security fraud. Don't tell people certain things.
Oh, which one last thing that you just made me think about. What do you think about uploading your entire resume to LinkedIn?
Absolutely not. Just because they put that feature in, that is not a wise move. Because I just spoke to a hiring manager the other day that received 2 identical resumes. Identical. He doesn't know who's the real person and who's the one plagiarizing. So he had to toss them both. If you have a stellar resume that's killer, why would you upload that? Again, your LinkedIn is like your brochure. And then your resume is your legal, financial, marketing document. They're 2 different things, but they should align perfectly.
All right. So we could go on for hours about LinkedIn. There are definitely some differences between federal and private sector, but common themes. Do it. And I want to thank Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. And again, this is Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. Look for our one-page download that is next to this recording, where you can get our tips in writing.
I want to welcome everybody and give everyone the opportunity to please go on LinkedIn and connect with us.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
That's what we just talked about.
That's right. So if you're listening, please go to LinkedIn and say, hey, listen to your podcast. I want to connect with you. We'd love to hear from you.
We would, both of us. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website. Nancy's website is www.solutions-workplace.com, or Ellen's website is www.getyouemployed.com. For additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.